Well, I'm joined now in studio by water expert Dr Anthony Turton. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, what's becoming more and more apparent is that the water shortages are not necessarily only because of the drought that we're facing. It's clear there is a water crisis. Is our water going the same way as our electricity?
When you need to manage a resource like water, you've got hard infrastructure, dams, pipelines, pumps, etc. But you also have soft infrastructure. The soft infrastructure, things like your institutions that make decisions, the way information flows in these institutions, etc. It's the soft infrastructure that's failing. And let me give you an example. If you just take the number of rain gauges that we have at the moment, we have as many rain gauges functioning today as we had approximately in 1920, 1930. These rain gauges have simply gone out of function. They've been vandalized, they've been broken, they haven't been brought back online. That is only one example. There are many other examples as well, how pumping stations, for example, talk to each other. So when a reservoir reaches a certain point, that should send information to another point to turn the pump on. So it's all of these little linkages, and there are many linkages along this value chain. Those linkages are breaking down at different levels, and because of that, we're starting to see a structural failure, systemic failure, a failure of critical parts of the total national system of delivering water.
Okay, so water infrastructure is becoming a problem, and I mean, you maintain in your policy bulletin that this is a growing crisis, and it's in part because skilled engineers, skilled other professionals have been pushed out. So we're in need of some kind of a reform, or at least some kind of acknowledgement of this.
Yes, and in this regard, I'm actually very supportive of Minister Nomvula Mokonyane. She's actually doing two very important things at the moment that the public needs to know about. The first thing she's doing is initiating the first policy reform program within the Department of Water Affairs since Kada Asmal. Okay. So there's actually a major policy reform program. That's what the purpose of the paper was, to feed into that policy reform process. But the second thing that she's doing is actually she's restructured the Department of Water Affairs into the Department of Water and Sanitation. And that is in recognition of the fact that it's our sewage problem that is the big, massive problem in South Africa. So I do believe that while we want to get angry with people, I don't think Minister Mokonyane is the one we should get angry at.
So you mentioned the sewerage point.
Yes.
So let's look at the actual quality of our water. I read that there are billions of litres of untreated or partially treated sewage being pumped into our dams and rivers every day.
Yes, there's approximately 4 billion litres, rounded off the number, that's 4,000 megalitres or 4 billion litres of untreated or partially treated sewage every day going into our dams and rivers. We've got 38 billion cubic metres in strategic storage. So we have enough water in strategic storage to get us through a drought. We can survive a few years on that water. However, because we're putting the sewage into that water now, we are destroying the quality of that water. It's no longer fit for purpose. And the thing that really concerns me the most is the fact that all of our bulk water processing plant is designed to take water from a river that's slightly contaminated, maybe with mud and salt, etc., and clean it up and make it safe for drinking purposes. It's not designed in any way to take sewage effluent and then treat that into potable water. Okay. So this is our crisis.
Is there a national strategy then?
I am not aware of such a strategy. I know there's talk of a strategy coming out. There is a thing called the National Water Resource Strategy, which is a broad-based document that doesn't deal with this issue. I might mention that the sewage issue, in fact, is a constitutional problem. Okay. The constitutional problem arises from the fact that your failing is actually at municipal level, and the national department doesn't have the authority to intervene at municipal level. So one has to get rid of that problem, and that's one of the reasons why the minister has launched this policy reform program.
How can we then conserve, manage, expand our water resources? Critically speaking, I mean, South Africa doesn't have a high rainfall average, globally speaking, so how are we going to manage our water resources?
It's actually quite simple. South Africa's got 38 billion cubic meters of water in our strategic storage. We need approximately 62 billion by the year 2035. So we can either get more water from the Zambezi, which is currently running dry, or we can desalinate, or we can recycle our total national water resource, 38 billion, 1.6 times. 38 times 1.6 comes to approximately 60. So in other words, our future, in my view, lies in recycling. Japan, for example, recycles the water 3 to 6 times. Okay. So technologically it's possible. It's not a technical problem. This is in fact an institutional problem. Okay. It's a structural problem. We've got to overcome that problem, and I do believe that it is soluble.
All right, Dr. Anthony Turton, we've run out of time, but thank you very much for coming in.
Pleasure, thank you.